Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. We have a very special guest joining an afternoon podcast. Kory Woods of MLive.com, dual beat reporter for the Detroit Lions and the Detroit Pistons. Kory, welcome back to the show, man. How's it going?
Man, everything is going good. Thank you for having me as always.
Yeah, man, I feel like I have to have you on at least once a month just to catch up because I know how crazy your life is and just crazy off season, sports world. I know every time we talk, it's always a great conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's about to get a little bit crazier this week. About to knock out a few bit more Pistons articles, and then it looks like I'm going to be switching my shift towards back to football because training camp starts this week for the Lions. So yeah, it's about to be a really big week.
I know we talk about Pistons on this podcast, but occasionally I'll see Lions stuff, and I was scrolling on Twitter, and everyone's freaking out because they thought Aiden Hutchinson got injured because Kirby Joseph put like the 97 stuff. I was just like, so I'm not that locked into Lions. I like go on all the beat writers. I was like, oh, Aiden Hutchinson's fine. I guess it was just like former college teammate that had passed away. I think I read correctly or something like that. But just
one of the former Michigan cornerbacks, I believe his name is Andre Selden. He passed away in a drowning incident. So I mean, when I saw the 97, I saw the Kirby Joseph put that out there, the 97 in the heart. I'm like, I'm gonna hold off before I jump to any conclusions because that could mean so many different things. You never know. Aiden could be going through something personally, and they just want to show some support. So I was cautious, but either way, it's still very unfortunate to see the news that popped out and what happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you get to cover probably one of the best NFL teams this year, which is probably gonna be really exciting for you. And people should definitely be tapping into your MLive articles because they're absolutely amazing.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Kyle and Ben, they do a really good job. And me come up behind those guys. I'm just trying to, do a little bit different stuff with my coverage. I mean, they got the practice of the game stuff and all that stuff really covered down to a T. So what I try to do is just go into a different lane with my articles and my storytelling. And hey, people feeling it. So I'm cool. I'm liking it.
Awesome. Well, we'll focus into some Pistons stuff here because that's what.
Pistons. That's what we're talking about today.
We'll get into that because that's probably why people are here. Before we kind of get into the season recap, I did want to do some summer league stuff because that's what everyone's talking about right now. And I wanted to know who has impressed you at summer league so far?
I mean, the obvious answer to me has got to be Bobby Clinton. I mean, this guy has just really shown that he could be. I don't want to jump off the deep end, like I said in my article. We're not rushing to crown this guy a potential rookie of the year candidate or anything like that because it's summer league. They're playing against their peers or guys that are trying to get back into the league or find a place in the league. So you just want to kind of temper those expectations. But when they made that trade with the Timberwolves to go up to number 37, there were two. If you look at it, I'm not revisionist history. It's on my articles. I said they're probably moving up to either get Clinton or Antonio Reeves because they were still adding more shooters. So now you got a guy that's pretty big. He can space the floor. I mean, he moves well, and he's also shown to be a solid facilitator as well. So I believe that, this, like Holland, he's going to be another project, somebody that's probably not going to be expected to contribute immediately. But I mean, that's a heck of a move for the Pistons right there. That was a nice get up. He's impressed me so far. This guy's not really getting talked about too much, and I don't really see him probably getting a spot on the team. But I thought, in the first couple of games, I thought Tolu Smith moved pretty well around the basket. Nothing great, but it was just I thought he was pretty solid around the basket. Ron Holland, I mean, we see the athleticism and the potential that's there, so I think it's going to be a little bit more work in progress for him as well. But to just move along, Bobby Clinton is the guy I'll pick.
Yeah, to your point, when they did trade up to get Wendell Moore and then the 37th pick with the Timberwolves, I had Antonio Reeves too. I thought that was a player that they possibly could target because if you kind of look at him coming out of college, he was just a straight bucket, and he kind of reminded me of like Alec Burks in a way. And then the other guy that I was looking at, because I thought Bobby Klitman would be gone by 38. If I'm being 100% honest, I was just like, he's going to be gone. There's no way. I
thought he was a steal.
Same here. I know talking to some of his people, like, former trainers and stuff, like they thought he was a first round pick. I mean, Kevin O'Connor had him on his podcast saying, first round pick. I guess he jinxed it. But I'm sure a lot of Pistons fans are happy there. I thought Tyler Smith was going to be a Piston personally. He was another guy at the G League night who was a really good shooter. Obviously, the Bucks drafted him before the Pistons could, but I'm really happy with Bobby Klitman. To your point, I love Tolu Smith. I love the way he crashes the glass. It's just he always goes up to try to grab a rebound. He might not always get it, but last game had a double-double, 15-14, caught a couple lobs, looked really great out there. Really like him. One guy that I've been kind of like advocating for, and I really like, is Dennis Jenkins, the Pistons guy. The type of pace he plays with at the point guard position at such a young age, I really haven't seen that in quite some time. I know they gave him a 2-way. I don't know what the plans are. I don't know if it's going to be mostly with the Motor City Cruise. I don't know if, and we'll get into it later, maybe it's a backup point guard position they look at, but those are the players that I've really been impressed with. I thought Ron has had positive and negatives, like everything negative, I think he can actually work on. I think a lot of the stuff that fans are really talking about is, him getting stripped, him getting blocked. All you have to do is go in the weight room and add more weight. And I think that can definitely be erased with Ron Holland. But I've been like really happy with Bobby Klitman and Ron Holland in the Summer League so far.
I'm going to say this too in defense of Klitman. Not Klitman, sorry, in defense of Holland. He's not going to be a guy that's going to have to be an immediate contributor this year, just like Klitman. So these are guys that the Pistons can just trot along slowly and just develop throughout the season and throw them out there in pockets just to see if they can sink or swim. So they're in a good spot to be quite honest with both of those picks, even as well as Jenkins. They don't have to rush a lot of these guys because they did one thing that they did not do last year, or pretty much any time during the Weaver tenure, and that's bring in solid veterans that can go ahead and, I guess you could say, give them a little bit of pacing when it comes to bringing along the rookies or the younger talent. So with Holland, they're going to be in a good spot. I wouldn't worry too early. I mean, I know people are saying how great Buzelis is doing out there. I mean, he's been showing out in the Summer League so far. But I mean, hey, just give it some time. They got Fred Vince in there that can help Holland with his shot, and with JB Bickerstaff in tow. And you got a guy like Sidney Lowe out there. They're going to work with some of those bigger guys on their defense and getting some of those things tightened up. So I wouldn't. It's early. It's early.
It is. I don't know if both of these guys are going to be playing tonight, but you have the Jazz tonight 8:30, which is like a consolation game. I don't know if Cody Williams is going to be playing. That's a player that a lot of Pistons fans are really high on. I don't know if Ron Holland's playing, but I hope they both play, because I'd love to see those guys go head-to-head tonight to kind of see how Cody Williams does, how Ron Holland does. Because I think both of those guys would definitely get up for that game, because these are two of the small forwards that I think a lot of Pistons fans really zeroed on in during the pre-draft evaluations.
Yeah, and I thought just off of the way that Holland has performed so far, he hasn't really had any really good shooting nights. I think this would just be another good game for him to get out there, show what he's worth, and try to end this Summer League on a high note before they go ahead and get into training camp.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do still want to kind of stick with Summer League, and this guy is a second-year player, and there's been a lot of discourse on social media about Marcus Sasser and him playing point guard at Summer League. I want to know what your thoughts are of the Pistons putting him at that point guard spot, and then I have another question following up about that position.
I mean, you want to see what he can go ahead and do in that position. I'm actually working on a projected depth chart article that I'll be dropping probably more than likely tomorrow. So, I mean, you just want to go ahead and see him out there and get some run and whatnot. I mean, it's not uncommon for second-year players to get out there. I think that they are really high on him off of what they seen in pockets last season as a guy that could potentially back up Cade Cunningham. I think they could, depending on how they do this rotation, that probably could end up going to Ivy if they decide to bring Ivy off the bench. He'll be the backup. But I think it'll just really to get another look under Sasser under the new regime. And again, a guy that could have played a little bit better, but again, we've seen him play well against league talent. So, maybe they're trying some different things with them. Hopefully his summer league was just the bad spot for him, which I really believe it was. I don't think it's anything to read too much into. But again, I think this guy I think they gave him out there for the point guard role just to see how he's going to do this season, because I think they're going to have plans for him probably being the immediate backup for Cade, or even looking to see, do we need to go out and go grab another point guard that's out there on the free agent market? Because there's still a couple of guys out there that are looking for jobs. One guy that I'm still pretty shocked is on the market is Tyus Jones. So you never know what they could be thinking, like, hey, can he take on this role? So
yeah, for like the Sasser talk, I know a lot of people they're kind of, I don't want to say they're confused, but maybe they're kind of like, this guy is a bucket getter and he should be playing shooting guard. But you kind of look, and we'll get into it later, you brought in Tim Hardaway Jr., who you traded for. You signed Malik Beasley. You traded for Wendell Moore, which I think Marcus Sasser would be above Wendell Moore in any kind of rotation. I want to say that.
Absolutely.
No shot at Wendell Moore. I think Marcus Sasser.
Yeah, no shot. It's just look at their experience. Wendell Moore has been there, but look at what Sasser has done in this short time. So
yeah. Honestly, I think when people look at the first game against Philly, he had 1 point. Didn't really look like he was too engaged. Maybe he was a little tired. Who knows? But I thought each game he's gotten better, and I thought last game you kind of saw him start to initiate, especially in the first quarter. He was looking for Donis Jenkins. He was looking for Bobby Klippman. And I know a lot of people got on his ass about taking the last minute, tough fadeaway jumper and missing it. But what I really liked about that game, Kory, is he got to the free throw line 13 times. Like that, I think some people should really take notice of that, of him getting to the line, him facilitating. I don't think he's a finished product if you want to play him as a backup point guard, because you don't really have the room at the shooting guard position right now, because you have so many guys in that type of depth chart or rotation, whatever you guys want to call it. But I think he's gotten better, and getting taught the point guard position by Jarrett Jack in Summer League, I think is a perfect guy to just really lean on to, if you really want to put him at that backup point guard spot. Maybe you have one, maybe you don't. I don't know. I've liked the experiment. I know some people on Twitter never play him at point guard again. This guy's not a point guard. What are the Pistons doing? He's a bucket getter. He's a Lou Williams type. Like, why are the Pistons experimenting with him? But I think that's what Summer League is all about. It's just experimentation and working on parts of your game that you might not get to work on during the NBA season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You want him trying all those little tricks and trades of his game right now, when I want to be careful how I say this. You want him trying the stuff right now when the games really don't matter.
Yeah.
They're really just exhibition games. Nobody should be going to the season like, oh, the Pistons won the Summer League championship. That is that's a sign of things to come. No, just you want these guys going out there and working out the kinks of their game. And again, like you said, even though Marcus Sasser is only 23 years old, he's still not a finished product. This guy still has some ways to go in developing his game. We know that he's a solid defender. We know that we know that he's a hell of a shooter. But again, as far as developing as a full NBA point guard, there are some ways to go. So yeah, get him out there and see what he can do as a facilitator, as running an offense. This is what you want to see right now. But again, to your point, I don't know if you can throw him out there right now as the backup point guard to Cade. But this is what they want to see. So now, again, there's still guys out there. They still have a little bit of money left. They might be able to talk some of these guys that come in here on a veteran minimum just for a 1-year deal to come and, get back in the league. Because I know a lot of these guys don't want to. I'm assuming when I say this, they don't want to go overseas unless they have to. So, again, there's some talent out there for them. There's some options out there for them. Again, who knows? Maybe they can still make a trade. You never really know what they plan to do. They still want to go ahead and acquire those assets, and so maybe they'll take on a contract, expiring contract for a year or something, and get some picks attached to it, just like what they did with getting Tim Hardaway Jr. from the Mavericks. They took on an expiring deal that had assets attached to them.
I'm glad that you said overseas and point guard, because that was actually one of my next questions. So obviously there were reports this week that the Detroit Pistons and the Houston Rockets tried to offer Patrick Beverley a veteran minimum contract to play on their basketball team. He obviously decided he's going to go over to Israel for the next 2 years on a $4 million deal to play over there. So do you think that the Pistons are still looking for a veteran backup point guard? I know you mentioned Tyus Jones, but maybe it's a trade market. Do you think that they really need to kind of look at that? Because you look at all the positions that they attacked this offseason, backup point guard, I think, is the one question mark where I don't really think it's set in stone yet.
Yeah, I still think they're in the market for one. Like I said, I already mentioned Tyus Jones. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Markelle Fultz is still out there as a possibility. You never know if they try to do some type of trade with the Chicago Bulls where they'll grab Lonzo Ball from them, pending he's healthy. That's a real big caveat right there. But I do think that they're in the market, still going to still be in the market for a backup point guard, just off of everything that we talked about. That Marcus Sasser is a guy that can come in there in pockets and play a role. But is he the guy right now to lead an offense with Cade Cunningham is off the floor? And right now I would say no. But again, it also depends on how they plan on staggering these minutes, because if Jaden Ivey's coming off the bench, yeah, he could back up Cade in some of those instances. We've seen Jaden Ivey as a facilitator. One could argue in the future maybe you could move Cade to shooting guard him and put Jaden at point. You never know. I'm just spitballing right now, but with the way the rotation is set right now, it looks like it could possibly be Beasley and Ivey competing for that 2-guard spot, and they still would need that backup point guard. So yeah, I still think they're in the market for one. I think Patrick Beverley would have been a great addition here, off of the simple fact that Patrick Beverley, you're not bringing him in for offense, but what you're bringing him in for is his tenacious defense. He's a loyal teammate, and with the team of the Pistons, where they're trying to pretty much take some things from the Lions, where they're talking about grit, Patrick Beverley is Black Air Force One's grit. He defines it. He's Black Air Force One energy. So I believe that is a guy that you hate to play against, but you love to have on your team. And I don't want to say it's a huge miss for them, but that would have been a solid get for this locker room.
Yeah, I talked about it earlier this week. Like, you hate playing against Patrick Beverley because he's just an irritant. But if he's on your team, he's going to have your back. Like, I know he got into some stuff with Isaiah Stewart this past offseason, or I think last year, kind of like messing with them in a pregame warm-up. But I guarantee if those two were teammates, they'd probably be like best friends, like 100%.
I mean, look at Pat Bev and Russ. Those two hated each other when they became teammates. They were like besties.
Yeah, I mean they became frenemies, if you want to call it that. But I kind of think when you hear the reports and you see the reports that they were looking to bring him in, I think that was kind of like an indication from the Pistons front office and the Pistons brass saying, like, we know that we have a lot of guards. We might want to start Jaden Ivey next to Cade Cunningham. We might want to put Beasley in there, maybe even Tim Hardaway Jr. But we think that, having a backup point guard, a veteran backup point guard, is needed for this team to get in the right direction in terms of just like manning the second unit. We know Jaden Ivey can do it. And I actually did that chart video yesterday, and I'm getting freaking cooked for it right now, 100%. Because I put Beasley in my starting five, and I'm getting cooked for it right now that I did not put Jaden Ivey. But hey, man, crazy things.
I would say this. I'm going to defend you in this regard. You have to think about this. Beasley, Beasley has been mostly a starter in his NBA career. I mean, he started a lot when he was with Minnesota. He started pretty much every game he played last year with the Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. This is also a guy where if you put him next to Cade Cunningham, you're getting that spacing and that stretching the floor that you definitely need. You got a guy that is around, it could be wrong, about 45% from beyond the arc, but a little bit over from close to 40% from 3-point range. I mean, that is who you want to have when you out there running offense. That's the type of guy you want Cade being able to kick the ball to and know that he can knock down the open shot. So again, you got Fred Vincent in there to go ahead and improve Jaden Ivey, and you got Ivey for a couple of years. So I mean, that is still a project that you can go ahead and build along. You only got Beasley on a 1-year deal, but it's not crazy to say that Beasley should start next to Cade Cunningham. It's just it's maybe it's not popular, but it's not crazy to think it if you just really watch both of their games and how just trying to envision how he would play next to Cade.
Yeah, I mean, Pistons fans are very passionate. That's why I love them. I'm not mad that they're cooking me. I always tell them, so you guys can make fun of me. You can cook me all you want. I'll take it on the chin. I really don't care. But hey, man. I guess that's the part about actually putting depth charts out, like kind of just like putting it out there, because my depth chart, I guarantee you, I haven't even clicked on the comment section, but it's already got like 55 comments. So I know
I'm probably going to get cooked too, because I was going to put Beasley in my starting 5. So I mean, I'll be right there with you.
Oh man, but I just to kind of wrap up this topic. Wouldn't surprise me if we do see them, and possibly, because there's been talks about them trying to absorb possibly a contract, or taking on draft picks. Maybe you get a backup point guard in that way. Markel Fultz, I know, is a guy, but it's another guy that really can't shoot. Do you really want that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but he did bring in Fred Vincent, so I don't know if there's anything there that you could salvage, but I think most Pistons fans are pretty locked in on Tyus Jones. But again, his situation's weird, because he's like, I don't want to be a backup. I want to be a starter. I'm like, well, I don't know where you're going to be starting at, dude. I really don't know.
I mean, there's also a chance they do a reunion with Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, he's another guy out there that you could. That's a veteran. Who knows what he's bringing at this point of his career? But again, it's just another guy that does have experience running an NBA offense that you can bring in there. Somebody that you could trust with the ball in his hands to not do anything super crazy. So maybe that's a possibility. Who knows? Spencer may be trying to go to a contender. And teams are still trying to figure out what's going on with their depth chart. So they have some options out there. It just depends on who wants to come to a 14-68 rebuild.
Yeah, I talked about that a couple of days ago about Spencer Dinwiddie. It's like, I do not think he would come to Detroit, just kind of given how he was treated. I think that wound is still very fresh, even though it's been 10 years.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but sometimes people they hold grudges on what happened during their exits from their team. So but again, it's a new regime. It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, I'm not saying he wouldn't come to Detroit, but honestly, I think that would be a perfect fit. A guy that is like a fringe starter, could back up or start. You could put him in the starting lineup in crunch time, but I don't really know. I thought he was going to re-sign with the Lakers, but maybe the Lakers didn't have enough crypto to re-sign him. I don't know, man. I really don't. But hey. I
was trying to avoid the crypto jokes, but then you went there.
Before we do get into the next topic of recapping this offseason, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the Game Time Ticket app.
You guys, I have to tell you about today's sponsor, the Game Time Ticket app. How exciting would it be to attend a Major League Baseball game this summer? Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. One of my favorite features within this app is the views from your seats feature. This allows you and shows you how close you're getting to the action before you buy your ticket to the event you're trying to go to. If you guys go over, Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And we are back. We want to thank Game Time Tickets for sponsoring today's podcast. Kory, I wanted to kind of get a 30,000 foot view. I wrote down all the moves that the Detroit Pistons have made. And I went back. This probably took me about an hour to go through Shams and Woj tweets. I wanted to get into the Tim Hardaway deal and kind of your reactions to it. What did you think of them trading Quentin Grimes and acquiring 3 seconds to take on just a 1-year salary of Tim Hardaway Jr.?
Well, first off, I thought it was a solid move. For one, Quentin Grimes has been going through some injuries. We know this. I believe he only played 6 games last year for the Pistons, and they got him at the trade deadline. This is also a guy that you have injury concerns about, that was also probably going to want a longer deal when the time came down to it. And when you're a team that is rebuilding and you've already been battling injuries over the past couple of years, do you want to sink money into a guy that has not been proven to stay healthy? Obviously, the Pistons did not. And I believe that was also a directive, not saying in this particular move, but when you heard Tom Gores talk about his disdain for having all of that money sitting on the bench last year, I believe that probably was a directive to hey, let's bring in some relatively healthy guys. Now, I know people want to get all up in arms about Tim Hardaway Jr.'s postseason performance with the Mavericks last year. How about this? The Pistons have not been in the postseason in 5 years. Let's not worry about what Tim Hardaway did in the postseason. Let's look at what he did in the regular season. He was the Mavericks' third leading scorer behind Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You're not bringing him in for his defense, but you're bringing him in to be a solid veteran who can be a decent bucket. You also have it on an expiring deal. You're not locked in long term. So now you're back in free agency. So now you have a lot of scenarios at hand. You're either back in free agency next year with some money to spend, or at the trade deadline, if there is a team looking to go ahead and part ways with one of their superstars or all-stars, you have an expiring contract to be able to float and make the deal more attractive. But on top of it all, you have a savvy veteran who's been in the playoffs, who's been in the NBA Finals, that can come into a young locker room and provide the savvy veteran leadership that you need, and also a guy who is relatively healthy. These are things that a 14 and 68 team need. So I don't understand. Well, I'm not going to generalize everybody. I'm just going to say what I think about the move. I think the move was a very good move based on all of those factors combined. There is really no downside to this move, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think initially when the trade happened, because there are reports that Tim Hardaway was basically going to be a Piston, and they were already in talks. I think some people really like the idea of Quentin Grimes. They like the idea of the potential of him, because if you look at him as a player, he was a 3-and-D prospect that the Pistons got in the Bojan and Alec Burks trade. I think he was kind of the player that a lot of Pistons fans okay, we're getting someone young. He's been up and down with injuries, but he's got a pretty good shot. There was, something to talk about there with Quentin Grimes. I think taking on a 1-year salary of $16 million and then still getting 3 second-round picks, which we're seeing right now this offseason, second-round picks are pretty valuable. Not a lot of teams are giving up first in a lot of these, trades that we've seen. A lot of teams are giving up these seconds. The Pistons got 3 seconds to take on an expiring salary of Tim Hardaway Jr. And to your point, you're getting a veteran. You're getting a guy that is a bucket getter at the end of the day. And I think his role in Detroit will probably be a little bit bigger than it was in Dallas. I could totally see him being out there, kind of taking into that Alec Burks role last year, just kind of being that veteran leader, that scorer, a veteran that, Cade and Ivey can lean on, because he's been in the league for quite some time. He's when he gets hot, man, he gets hot. I remember going to a Pistons game when we're playing the Mavs, and I think he had like 35, almost 40 points. He just could not miss. He was unconscious. But I honestly, I think this move is pretty solid given what they gave up. And obviously, and I know a lot of fans are still upset over, losing Quentin Grimes, but I thought, honestly, it wasn't a bad move.
It wasn't. And, and this is with no disrespect to Quentin Grimes, but Quentin Grimes is not a player that just cannot be replaced at any stretch throughout this rebuild. They can go find a guy that can do what Quentin Grimes can do, whether it's in free agency or through the draft next year. So that's why I said I don't believe they lost anything with getting rid of him right now to maintain some financial flexibility while also bringing in a savvy veteran. So, I mean, I get the potential. The potential. It's there. It's sex. The unknown is always attractive. So, I mean, I understand why some fans feel like that. But if you just look at the long term view of this move, it was really good.
Yeah, I honestly think when you kind of look at just Trajan's first move, I thought this was a pretty solid move. Addressing something that you need more shooting, you need a guy that's going to be relatively healthy, and a guy that you could possibly lean on in crunch time during, if it's a close game. So I thought, honestly, pretty good move to get Tim Hardaway Jr. and 3 seconds. Now, one of the other trades that the Pistons did make, and we talked about this guy earlier, it was trading up the second day in the draft for Bobby Klintman and Wendell Moore. I know we talked a little bit about Bobby Klintman, but what did you think of this trade for the value to trade up in the second round, and you only had to give up your, I think, 52nd or 53rd pick to the Timberwolves?
I thought it was smart. I mean, they had their. Here's the thing that I like about teams, and what I liked about what Trajan did. He saw that there was somebody that could be potentially there that they wanted to grab. And they said, hey, we're going to make this move up to be in position to probably go grab this or those persons. And they got one of their targets. They got Klintman. Wendell Moore, I mean, no disrespect. I don't know if we're really expecting him to contribute much to this Pistons roster next year, just based off of what we've seen from him or lack thereof in the league so far. But the move to go ahead and get up a guy, go and get a guy like Klintman that can be of some value to you maybe towards the end of next season and then beyond, I think it was a very solid move. Another smart move by Langdon. And again, they didn't stand pat. I saw like a broken record. They saw like they I don't know who they might have had on their target. Like I said, I had Klintman and Reeves as potential guys that could go grab at 37. Reeves obviously went like 10 picks later, but good move. No need to add anything other than that. Just a good move.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna ask you to give a letter grade because some people don't know how to grade those, but I thought it was a solid move. But the Wendell Moore stuff, there's obviously a Duke connection there, so I don't know if people want to do that, but maybe he could be a G League guy. I don't know, but I thought you had to take some salary on, and I think getting Bobby Klintman was just kind of like the main attraction of this trade because I can't remember the last time the Pistons drafted someone in the second round and they produced this well in the summer league. I really can't.
Me neither. I mean, this guy is just showing his what so far, and it's proven to be a good move. I'm curious to see how he's going to look during preseason. That's going to be the real, I guess you say, sign for me how much time he gets in preseason and how he looks against some better competition.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see where they slot him at. I don't know if he projects more of a small forward at the NBA level or a power forward. But being that tall and having guard skills and some of the passes he makes are just wild. But it's insane just the type of prospect he is. He's so intriguing to me, and I think Trajan definitely, and the Pistons, I should say, front office definitely had their eye on him, and I think they're pretty surprised that he was there still in the second round.
I mean, yeah, I mean the guy produced at Wake Forest, produced in the Australian Basketball League. I mean, he has some experience. He's been around the block, so it's again, I still think it's a little bit of a project, maybe not as much as Holland, to be quite honest, but. I mean, I think the guy is going to be a steal depending on how he plays in this preseason, those early on games. Again, smart move.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're shooting 40% from three. In the summer league, and 4 assists a game. That's just like wow, like crazy. But really good move by the Pistons. Now, the guy that we talked about quite a bit was Tobias Harris, and me and you were getting into conversations before the offseason even started. Like, don't sign Tobias Harris if it gets into the $30 million range. Obviously, the Pistons did not get into the $30 million range. What were your thoughts of the 2-year, $52 million move to sign Tobias Harris to come to Detroit?
Ooh, well, I really should have wrote a bulletin point down for this one, so I'm going to try not to lose my place. When we talked about this, and I can't remember whether I was on your show or not, I said that for me, I believe getting Tobias Harris between the $20 to $25 million a year annually will be a good deal. 26. Okay, I'm not about to split hairs over $1 million.
Right.
Whatever. It's not, everybody's like, oh, it's an overpay. First off, the league cap is rising. The salary cap is ever rising. He's not getting paid the $36 million that he was getting paid with the 76ers. So for one, that's a plus. Second, it's a 2-year deal. You're not locked into Tobias Harris long term. I'm not trying to cast any type of bad predictions on the Pistons next season, but let's just say next season is a wash. Let's just say that. Let's just say next season they finish 25, 28 games. Okay, an improvement. Then boom, the next year of his contract is an expiring deal. So now you have another asset where you can flip him at the deadline or that offseason, or you can just part ways with them after the year and you got some money back. You also have to look at the free agent landscape. If you were not going to get Tobias Harris, who were you going to get?
Yeah.
You're not getting, and I'm just being real, no disrespect to the Pistons organization. I'm saying this from covering a 14-68 team that was 17-65 the year before. You weren't signing Paul George. You weren't getting DeMar DeRozan. Any of those big name free agents that you could possibly sign in your NBA 2K dynasty mode, franchise mode, you weren't getting those guys. But what you did get was a veteran that's been around the block that was similar to THJ, third leading scorer on his team last season, for Harris behind Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, a guy that is a career 38, 39% three-point shooter that can be a bucket. And you got somebody that wants to be in Detroit. During the NBA broadcast the other day, I actually wrote a story off of his comments. Tobias Harris wants to be here. That's half the battle for the Pistons in free agency, is getting players that want to be here. Now you're having another shooter around Cade Cunningham, which is what they needed. You're probably got your starting power forward next to Jalen Duren. And that means probably, so more than likely, we're talking about Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench. And, again, no disrespect to Isaiah Stewart, but the stretch four that they were trying to turn him into, Tobias Harris is already that. So I just think that this is just another solid move for the people. If you want to get locked up on the $52 million, just research the cap. I mean, the Pistons had to spend the money, and they didn't lock him in long term. And if it works out, I mean, who knows? Maybe you bring it back again on a haircut, or if it doesn't work out, you move on. It's again the way I think that Langdon has operated with the move of acquiring Tim Hardaway Jr., of acquiring a Tobias Harris was smart because he's not financially, the Pistons are not financially tied to them long term in the event that things do not work out. Obviously, they brought them in here for it to work out, and we see the tangible reasons as already outlined why it could help. But it just saying, in the event that it doesn't, it's a low risk move.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of great points about you weren't going to get the OG Anunobys, the Pascal Siakams, the DeMar DeRozans of the world. You just weren't. And I think Pistons fans, after they saw the huge extensions, because if you look at all the names that they were linked to, Tobias Harris signed for the lowest amount of money. Miles Bridges signed for more money than Tobias Harris. So did OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam resigned. So they're getting a guy that has been here before, understands what it's like to play in Detroit. Also helps that he met his wife here in Detroit. I think that was a big selling point to come back. I think she actually missed home. But I think for the money, $26 million a year is not really that much. And to your point, it's a 2-year deal. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You could possibly flip him because he's only on the 2-year deal, and $26 million isn't really a whole lot. I honestly think for the move, he could be your starting power forward next to Jalen Duren, have a floor spacer next to Cade, a guy that can score at all 3 levels. Obviously, we're not going to say like he's like this lockdown defender, but he's at least an average defender. He's at least I don't want to say he's a plus defender, but given like who they had, like Kevin Knox last year, Isaiah Livers last year, like I think Tobias Harris will be a much improved upgrade in terms of just scoring the basketball and just being in the starting lineup. I honestly didn't really hate this move.
Yeah, he's not going to be all NBA defense, but he's not going to be chopped liver out there too. I mean, you're at least going to get some effort out of him. And I mean, that's going to be half the battle. And again, who knows what he does in scheme under JB Bickerstaff. That's going to also just going to be a big sign right there. But again, it's I don't understand how there could be any criticism over this move, just given the state of the franchise and where they're at right now. I mean, it's they lost nothing with this move at all. They're going to gain everything. I believe a lot. I believe this move right here is this move going to take them to a 40, 50 win team. I'm not going to rush there, but this move coupled with THJ and probably some other ones we're going to talk about, it gets them away from being a 14 win team. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. I think Vegas had the line of 24, which is a 10-win improvement, which they could absolutely win 24 games. I would probably bet the over on that. I think that's probably
absolutely. I believe they should be looked at as north of 25.
Yeah. Obviously you're bringing in a new coach and new system, but you're bringing in veterans too that can win you basketball games. Because some nights NBA teams just don't want to get up, and the Pistons could take full advantage of that. But I did want to stick with the offseason. A guy that we talked about quite a bit was Malik Beasley in the offseason. We were talking about, there is a Detroit connection. I believe you told me that all the way back in February, I believe. Like, hey, like he does have a Detroit connection. His mom's from here. So what were your thoughts of, 1, getting Malik Beasley, and 2, getting him on such a cheap deal?
I honestly thought that Gary Trent Jr. would have been a target for them because, there were rumors that Gary Trent's his value was going down. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe they could go ahead and get Gary Trent on the cheap. I did not think they would be able to get Beasley this cheap. I mean, 1 year, $6 million. You cannot hate that. Again, a guy that has been a NBA level starter that has proven that has played along some of the best in the NBA. I mean, Giannis, he's played with Bron and Dame. I mean, he's played with some of the best in the league. And again, a guy that's a bucket at his best. when he believes in Minnesota, he was averaging around 20 points per game. I'm not saying he's going to do that here, but this is a guy that can, add to your spacing, pretty athletic, and another veteran, even though he's still relatively young. He's only like 27 years old, but he's been around the block for quite a bit. I think it's a solid move. And the thing that really makes it attractive is that you're adding another shooter that is well traveled, tenured on a really cheap deal. Like, I thought he probably would have, went to a contender because that's where he's been at over the past couple of years. I did not think that he would be coming to the Pistons on a $6 million deal. So I think that this is also a guy that could potentially be a starter for you as well. That's why I think it's such a hell of a get, because I know people want to say, hey, Jaden Ivey. I'm not saying Jaden Ivey's career in Detroit is done or anything like that. They still have him. But this is a guy for at least 1 year where you're trying to go ahead and turn things around and build this team back up and build some respectability. This could be a guy that could be a starter for at least day one, and then maybe somewhere down the line you make some changes and stagger those minutes where you're getting Jaden Ivey more closer to the starter minutes, maybe playing him like a Ginobili. Not comparing him to Ginobili, people, just saying as far as staggering the minutes, because I know how people like to reach. So that's, again, Beasley, $6 million 1 year. That's good.
I kind of talked about it this past week about him being a high volume 3-point sharpshooter. And that's something that the Pistons really didn't have. And when you kind of look at his numbers, he's kind of been anywhere from that 38 to high 40s in terms of 3-point percentage. Now, I know there are some people that are watching saying, well, he got $6 billion because he's a poor defender. We're not up here saying that Malik Beasley is an all defensive player of the year type of player that the Pistons would get for $6 million, but I didn't think we were going to get a Malik Beasley, Kory.
Right.
I thought Gary Trent Jr. was more on their radar, kind of given, the type of player he is. And obviously he's going to the Bucks, which is kind of funny because that's where Malik Beasley was. It's kind of it's his replacement. But I think Malik Beasley, I think a lot of Pistons fans are really going to like him, just given the type of player he is and the type of threes that he does take, because I guarantee you he's probably going to be taking 8 threes tonight in Detroit, bare minimum.
And he should.
Yeah, he really should, man. I'm glad that we did sign him, because we sound really smart because we're talking about this back in February and we're talking about it again in July. But I mean
we were ahead of the curve.
That was a guy that was on my radar. I was like, maybe take a look at Beasley. You never know. But hey, man, I'm happy that he is coming here, and maybe he'll be doing those Harlem shakes every time he hits the three. I don't know if you've seen those videos.
and I will say this. I know, with the moves of Hardaway, Harris, Beasley, I know people are concerned about, hey, where's the defense they're gonna come from? Okay, well, you got to look at it like this. Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't fix everything in one offseason. Try to fix as much as you can, but you can't fix everything. And while the Pistons were 25th, 26th last year in defense, they were also 24th and 26th, respectively, from the field and 3-point range. So at least they addressed one problem this offseason, and that was their shooting. The defense, I believe the defense can be improved just off of having, 1, healthy bodies, and then 2, they now have a coach that's going to come in here and be a real stickler for their attention to defense. I mean, I know Monty Williams was regarded for possibly being that, but we all know that last season did not go the way, in any shape, fashion, or form. Last season did not go according to plan. So I would just push all that to the side and just let's see what JB can do as far as, getting these guys to commit to defense. And, that's been a thing for him.
Yeah, I think, getting a guy like Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., they're going to make a lot of threes this year. They really are. I'm not saying the Pistons are going to be like top 5 in like 3-point makes, but they'll probably be the middle of the pack in terms of attempts and makes, because you're getting guys throughout their career who like to shoot threes, and a lot of them. So I think that's something to what you said, like Trajan Langdon, to kind of check that box. Now, one of the last moves the Pistons have made so far was acquiring Paul Reed off of waivers. Now,
B-ball Paul.
I honestly think the media is going to have a lot of fun with him, because I don't know if you watch some of his interviews, man. He's hilarious. He's really funny. What were your thoughts of the Pistons claiming him off waivers?
That was, and I'm still getting familiar with B-ball Paul, just to be quite honest with you. I'm not gonna lie, but just off of the things that I've seen from him and the things that I've read, I mean, they did need another addition to that big man rotation with with James Wiseman exiting, and they needed a guy that is a dog in the low post when it comes to getting on that glass, just being aggressive. That's Paul Reed to a T right there, from everything that I've seen and just the stuff that I've read. I mean, he's been one of the top offensive rebounders at his position, something that the Pistons desperately needed. And again, when we want to talk about the deal that they brought him in, I mean, they acquired him on a very easy deal. He could possibly be a guy that they keep over the next couple of years. Or again, there are teams that are going to be in need of a big man out there on the trade market come towards the, let's say, December, January-ish. He or Isaiah Stewart, I'm just saying it out, just throwing it out there. Those could be guys that the Pistons receive phone calls about, where they team like, hey, what do you want from them? Hey, what do you got? So again, I think it was a really solid move. They didn't get potential targets like a Tice, a Hartenstein. I mean, a lot of guys that the Pistons could have went to change their big man rotation. They went pretty early, or So I mean, I think it was a smart move. It again gets them in a really good spot financially, where they're not really committed to a long-term deal. And again, when we talk about this rising cap, it just makes sense flexibility wise and for what they needed in their rotation. I think that having him in there, depending on how, I would say right now, just off of how I'm looking at this depth chart, I would say probably right now he would be the immediate backup to Jalen Duren, and probably Isaiah Stewart will end up being the immediate backup to Tobias Harris. So smart move.
It's funny you say that, because I did my depth
chart. Oh wow! And as we are on the live, crazy, Joe Biden has withdrawn from the U.S. presidential race.
For real? Wow.
Shams. Wow.
Shams is really tweeting political stuff.
Yeah.
Bruh.
What?
Bro, no, I was just having a conversation. Yeah, I know this is completely off topic.
Wow.
We're talking about Pistons stuff, but I was just like, how funny would it be if you had Woj and Shams like tweet like political stuff? Like, that would be so much more entertaining.
Well, yeah, we just got it. Damn, Joe Biden's gone. Okay.
That's wild. I mean, everything I saw on Twitter, that's what they were talking about. They were saying that he didn't really have COVID, but I'm not going to go into those conversations. But yeah, man, wow, that's crazy. I know we're talking about Paul Reed, and I had Isaiah Stewart in my depth chart as a backup center.
Yeah,
and I had Paul Reed as the third string center, because I just didn't really know where to put him, because I had I think I had Fontecchio as a backup power forward and Ron Holland as a backup small forward, but I just didn't know where to put him. But to your point, I could definitely see him as a backup center, just because if you look at the numbers to Isaiah Stewart, obviously Isaiah Stewart offensively shot higher volume from three, but Paul Reed also has a pretty good percentage from three on low volume. But defensively, I think their numbers are very similar. Paul Reed's are a little bit better if you kind of get into the analytics and the advanced numbers. Would not surprise me if he does back up Jalen Duren in certain situations, because I don't really think that you could play Isaiah Stewart every day as a backup five. I think there's situations where both of them could actually play at the power forward and the center position if they want to kind of go bigger, depending on who the team is. But I thought for the money, Kory, it's only $8 million, and I believe I read somewhere in his contract you could waive him by, I believe, January 6th or 7th, and his money doesn't go against the cap. Like if it's just, it doesn't work out, like the Pistons could just waive him or possibly trade him, but I don't think they're going to. I think kind of given like what he did last year because Joel Embiid was injured. He stepped up. He had to start, and he was putting up like really, really good games for the 76ers. I honestly think this is kind of more of the underrated moves that Trajan did make. It's not really getting talked about like Tobias or Malik or even Tim Hardaway Jr. But I mean, you got a solidified backup center, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is they needed to solidify that rotation just off of some of the things that we've seen seen happen over the past couple of years. Last year we saw James Wiseman not really reach the potential that they were hoping that they were hoping from him when they acquired him in that deal, in that multiplayer deal. And again, Paul Reed is a dog, and he's proven it. And like I said, I'm learning more about him, and the things that I'm looking, the things that I'm seeing from him, you're now starting to see what Trajan Langdon is trying to do with this Pistons team, and that's build some type of identity of hard workers and guys that love basketball.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I thought, for the move, I know a lot of Pistons fans, when he got like waived, they're like, oh, maybe we go get Paul Reed because we kind of missed out on Nick Claxton, we missed out on Isaiah Hartenstein and stuff like that. And they picked him up, and honestly, I think it was a pretty solid move. So one of the last questions I did put in the prep sheet, and I saw on Twitter because like apparently some people have no comprehension. What would you grade the Pistons offseason so far?
Oh, I got raked over coals for this one when I did my grading process, because they're like, you gave that move a B? And I'm like, you do know what a B is, right? That means good. Overall, I would say I would get, and that's what I'm going to give their offseason. I'm going to give it like a solid B. Definitely not a B minus, but I'm going to give it a solid B. They made moves that made sense when you sit down and think about them. It would, just being fair, and I would say this if you even asked me, there were some moves that Troy Weaver had made in the offseason over the past couple of years that were some head scratchers. It was just like, okay, how does this help this team now? Like, okay, we know they're in a rebuild, but how does it help the rebuild? You're able to at least look at these moves and say, okay, you know what? Maybe they're not this 35-40 win team next year, but you're at least seeing guys that can come in and help out this squad, as from learning how to win, from helping them with their spacing, from helping them with how they approach the game, see things in the game. They brought in veterans to aid the development process, the improvement process, and they are not handicapped long-term. I think it's a B given all things considered. They didn't, in my opinion, they didn't overpay anybody. They didn't handicap themselves long-term. This is what fans were wanting to see over the past couple of years. Tangible moves to improve the team. I give it a B. Only way I would have said it would have been what would have gotten an A from me is if they were able to land an all-star caliber talent with those picks attached, and they didn't have to mortgage their future. That would have given me that would have been the A. But again, a B is good. A B is good, people. A B is okay. It's not it's not like I said C.
Yeah. I saw that on Twitter. You know, some Pistons fans kind of get a little bit reactionary to everything, and that's to be expected. They're passionate about the team. I didn't think a B was actually like a bad grade, kind of given like who they brought in. They, trading for Tim Hardaway, getting Malik Beasley, signing Tobias Harris, picking up Paul Reed off waivers. I thought they had a pretty solid offseason, and all the moves that they made, I think, were sound decisions. To your point, there wasn't any head-scratching decisions like, wow, really? We went after that guy? I think Trajan's looking at the roster, and he mentioned it in his presser, saying, like, last year there were a lot of low IQ players, which was kind of like a sneak diss, by the way, saying like I gotta get some players that are high IQ basketball players to help this team get out of the position that they're currently in. And I think when you get vets like a Beasley, like a Tobias, like a Tim Hardaway, they're going to help you try to get out of the position that you're currently in.
This is what you need. You need guys that are going to help you dig yourself out of this rut. I don't know. I'm really trying to rack my brain on looking at free agency and say, well, they should have made this move or they could have made this move. I'm trying to I rack my brain to try to find that move, and I can't think of one. And here's also the other thing that people that really need to realize when it comes to this free agency thing: it takes two to tango. You have to be able to. You got to have guys that want to be here. Yeah. And granted, they got Tim Hardaway at the trade. We know that, but they got Paul Reed off waivers. But when it comes to like a Harris and a Beasley, those guys had to want to be here. And the fact that you got both of those guys here on very very friendly deals for the Pistons and their financial flexibility moving forward, it's a major get. And you're now, what you're going to see is when you go to Little Caesars Arena and you watch a Pistons game, I believe under JB Bickerstaff and the veterans they have in the room, you're now going to see. I almost said something that I shouldn't have said. You're going to see. I don't want to say quality basketball. You're going to at least see something that resembles competent basketball. I think that it's arguable with all of the changes, all of the injuries they dealt with last season, all of the uncertainty and inconsistency. It's arguable to say whether it was a competent basketball product put out on the floor. You're seeing that right now with the move that Langdon has made, and also too, which is really rare sometimes. Langdon has done so far everything that he said he was going to do. Now, whether that turns out to be a winning product or not, that remains to be seen. But you can at least see that he's done everything that he said he was going to do in his first, so many days as president of the organization. And this feels like a different coat of paint for this Piston season coming in. You're not going in wondering like, okay, you're hoping for some magical turnaround, some type of magical ride. No, they're not selling that. They're selling like, hey, we're not taking any shortcuts. This is going to be a true process, and we're not going to skip any steps. And we brought in what we feel is needed to at least get the ball rolling. Everything else, as far as an acquiring, fixing the defense, acquiring all-star caliber talent, maybe that's a part of the plan. But right now, they addressed what they were able to address, and they did a damn good job of doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I know me and you haven't talked about Langdon or even JB Bickerstaff for that matter, but to your point, it feels different. The vibes feel different. The players seem happy. not to say that the players weren't showing up to Summer League last year. They were. But the veterans are out there. They're doing interviews, obviously, with ESPN and all the other NBA TV, the companies that are broadcasting these games. But it feels different, and I'm not trying to sell fans that this is going to go from 14 to 45 wins overnight. I think there's a process and there's baby steps that they have to take to get to that point. But I think last year the Pistons were on the freeway and they missed the exit. I think Langdon has got them back on the right track and got them on the freeway to the destination they're trying to get to.
Absolutely. I believe that right now Langdon to me right now, and this is just you could call it a very lazy comparison. I do not care. I believe Langdon is operating right now with the Pistons early on the same way that Brad Holmes operated with the Detroit Lions. He's not jumping off the deep end. He's not trying to put a Band-Aid on something. He just made smart, small, tangible moves to at least get the ball rolling on creating an identity, establishing a culture. And again, it might take a 2 or 3 years to get it done. But look at what happened with Brad Holmes. He went ahead and acquired some veterans that he was comfortable with while making smart moves in the draft and free agency. Didn't bring anybody on a deal that was too long term. That first season, we know it wasn't great, 3-13-1, but hey, you still saw throughout that entire season, even when they were getting their butts kicked, you saw a Lions team that came out to compete every single game. Next year, slow start, made some moves, finished 9-8. Last year, I mean, hey, even though it didn't end great, 12-5, first division title in 30 years, first NFC championship appearance in 30 years. I think that, and I bring it home, is like, I think the way that Trajan Langdon is starting out right now just kind of resembles that. It gives me that same feel of a guy that's coming in like, hey, we're going to take our time and do this right and establish something here. This is what is needed.
I could kind of see the parallels where you're going with, and it's so funny. I've talked to a lot of different people on this podcast, and someone that we both know, Zarek, who does a really good job, taking pictures and covering the Pistons. And I know you're a WWE guy. You love wrestling, so is he. And I still think about this because we were talking to Eric Vincent last week. He's another wrestling guy too. And Zar said, Trajan reminds me of when Triple H was the COO when he took over Raw. He's just like, he's gonna be that guy that turned wrestling back into something that wrestling fans really liked. And he kind of used that parallel with Trajan, saying like he's gonna turn, the Pistons into a good product on the floor. And I absolutely love that because I know there's a lot of Detroit Pistons fans that love WWE and just wrestling as a whole.
Oh yeah, that's a hell of a parallel right there, because what Triple H did, he stepped in, he heard the concerns from inside and with the fan base, and he slowly turned the WWE product around to something that was watchable again, to something that people are familiar with, and be able to kind of connect back to their own childhood memories of when it was great compared to now. And he's now now he's in the main one of the main driver's seats of this whole thing. He's taking it to heights they have not even seen before. So I think the Triple H comparison is pretty spot on, and curious to see where Langdon goes with it now, especially with this all-star ensemble of the front office that they have. And it appears they also have a Tom Gores, who is, I think it's fair to say that Tom Gores has always been willing to spend the money necessary to make this team better, but now they have the basketball minds in place to make sure we're spending this money correctly. And again, I think of any offseason since Tom Gores has taken over this team and had money, this has been their best offseason.
Yeah, I would probably say, as I was having this conversation yesterday, I haven't seen competent moves like this since Stan Van Gundy's first offseason. That's what it reminds me of. Like when he took over and he's going out and, trading for Brandon Jennings, getting, I believe he signed like Caron Butler and just a bunch of vets. And they started turning it around. Obviously, they eventually did, waive Josh Smith and then went on like a 12, 13 game winning streak. But that's what it kind of reminds me of. That's where the vibes kind of feel like bringing in a new guy. He's cleaned the mess from a previous regime and he's trying to get it back on track. That's what it kind of reminds me with Trajan. But the wrestling parallel was really funny by Zara. I love that, man. He was like kind of calling Tom Gores, Vince McMahon, and then like Trajan, Triple H. Like it was definitely a really funny conversation. I did want to ask you this because I saw it this morning. So Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley have contract extensions with their respective teams. What are your thoughts on Jalen Green not getting a contract extension when the number 1 and the number 3 pick got that rookie max extension?
That's an interesting one right there. I'm still shocked that he didn't get it. I mean, look, we can say what we want about Jalen Green. The kid is talented. He is a bucket. When he's on fire, he's a little streaky, but when he's on fire, I mean, watch out. The fact that he did not get an extension, though, I do think that could say some things about what Houston thinks about him being the face of that franchise long term.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have not seen enough from a maturity level to trust him with that type of bag right now. Because I mean, what Cade and Evan Mobley, they signed some pretty significant deals. And again, Mobley, we've seen what he's done on the floor in Cleveland, playing next to Jared Allen too. He definitely deserved that. He definitely deserved that deal. And I think Cade deserved his deal as well. I mean, granted, you're not paying Cade for what you've seen from him on the floor per se, but when Cade is healthy, Cade look like one of the best players in the league. I don't care, and I'm not reaching when I say this. There was a stretch, and I can't remember what month it was, but there was like a stretch of games where Cade was just dropping like 30 a night, and just look at every bit of the number 1 overall pick. I think that if he's able to be healthy, he's really going to turn into one of the best players in the league. But just to kind of get back on topic, both Cade and Mobley, I believe, showed the maturity of being a guy that you could build your team around and you can trust, like, hey, we're giving him this. We know that he's going to put in the work and that he's dedicated to turning this franchise around. I'm not in Houston. I don't have any intel on what's going on there, but I do believe when those two guys get the bag and he doesn't, there might be something working there that we don't know about.
Kind of to your point, I'm not locked in with Houston, but I do have people that I follow that do cover the Rockets very extensively. When you draft guys like Reed Shepherd, who's been having a phenomenal summer league, and you kind of look at Jalen Green, even Sengun, who I'm really high on. They didn't give him a contract extension either. And you see all the rumors last year that they didn't want to part with Sengun and Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges. And you look who the coach is, and they brought in all the veterans. They may be in a package, Jalen Green and Sengun. Who's to say they don't call Phoenix and say, hey, what do you want for Devin Booker? We have the picks. We have the assets. Like, I think that's a big reason why Jalen Green didn't get an extension, because I think where Houston is at in terms of where they want to be as an organization and is in a franchise is they're trying to make win now moves. You don't hire Udoka just to rebuild and you're happy with 30, 40 wins a season. They're trying to get an NBA championship under him.
Absolutely.
he's a great coach, and it would not surprise me if you see a Jalen Green or a Sengun in trade rumors this upcoming season, because they went out and signed really good vets. Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet. They traded for Steven Adams, who is going to be healthy this season. So my assumption and my guess is the reason why Jalen Green didn't get an extension is because the Rockets really want to really ramp this up. And also in that draft class, Mo Wagner got a contract extension, or Franz Wagner. I'm sorry, Franz Wagner got a contract extension too. So a lot of people from Cade's draft class got paid.
Yeah, I'm curious on where they could, if they decide to move them, where they would ship them to. That would be the I guess you could say the $1 million question or whatnot. But yeah, the fact that I'm not too shocked. It just to me, it just says a lot that he didn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, he's played more than Cade, but I mean, it's got to be something that they're seeing behind the scenes where they do not want to they don't feel that he's that guy that they can believe in long term. Otherwise, you make that move. So again, with them not making that move, you could possibly see a Jalen Green deal, being moved at some point, maybe even before the season started.
Yeah, you never know. I was kind of surprised because we have a group chat and someone's just like, so Cade got paid, Evan Mobley got paid, but Jalen Green didn't. And I was just like, well, I think that kind of speaks volume to not so much him as a player, but I think it speaks more volume to what Houston is trying to accomplish. And when you draft a guy like Reed Shepherd, who is just a catch and shoot specialist, and I think he's going to be really good for Houston, maybe they look at Jalen Green as expendable, because I think Reed Shepherd kind of fits more of what you want out of a shooting guard versus what Jalen Green is. And that's not to slight Jalen Green in like any way, shape, or form. I think he's a good player. I just think the way Houston wants to play Reed Shepherd makes more sense schematically for Udoka.
I will say this. There were rumors of the Rockets trying to get KD at some point. Matt Ishbia was very adamant in the fact that they're not moving Kevin Durant in any shape, fashion, or form. But if they don't get out to the start that they're looking to get out to this year, I mean, maybe that is something that could be revisited, because do you want to have that high of a payroll and you're not winning? Which is also why which is also why I'm shocked Brandon Ingram has not been moved yet. I'm curious to see. I still think it's possible he gets moved before the season starts. I don't know how they go into the season with that dynamic, but I believe Jalen Green could possibly be a target that the Rockets look to move to go get a Kevin Durant out of Phoenix. But yeah, him not getting his deal is just very telling.
Yeah, someone in the chat said that Barnes got the bag too. Yeah, the 4th overall pick got the bag.
Barnes did get. I think Barnes got the bag first, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so. That like if I'm Jalen Green, I'm feeling some type of way. I don't know if I'm like, honestly, like all the guys in the almost all the top 5 draft picks got paid and I didn't. I don't know, man. I don't know. Do you have time for maybe a couple Q&A questions? We can wrap this up.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm just still over here and shocked about my phone blowing up about this precedent news. I'm not gonna get political on your podcast. I don't talk about that stuff, but man, that's still shocking.
It's more funny that Shams actually leaked it out than anybody else. I think that's what makes it funny. Like,
that's I think that's what's still kind of like giving me, blowing me like, how did Shams break this?
It's kind of like when Adam Schefter posts NBA news. You're kind of like, what the fuck?
Shefty does come on the left field with some news every now and then. I'm like, who told you this? Why?
I mean, they probably get the same calls from the same agencies, and he's probably like, Woj hasn't done it yet. Watch this. Derek Brown asked, if Duran does miss some time this season, will Paul Reed start or Isaiah Stewart?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a hard one, honestly. I would honestly have a better feel on that once we get to training camp. Then I'll be able to kind of like, have a better answer on that.
Mm-hmm.
Off top, I want to say off top Isaiah Stewart, just off the fact that he's been there, he knows the team, but also again, this is a new system, this is a new coaching staff, so it's a real hard one to say. I think this is a better, I'm not trying to waffle on the question. I just think that's a better question to ask towards training camp or once we kind of see what happens in preseason. But if I have to pick, I'm just going to just say Isaiah Stewart because I mean you're paying him 4 years, $64 million.
Yeah, just for the sake of this question, I'll answer it, Derek. I always will. I think they probably go Isaiah Stewart too. To Kory's point, Isaiah Stewart's been here. He's got more familiarity with all the players. Not to say Paul Reed isn't capable of starting. Paul Reed's got to learn his teammates. He's got to learn they both have to learn a brand new system under JB Bicker's staff. But I think Isaiah Stewart has more chemistry with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. But it would not surprise me if Paul Reed did get a starting nod if Durham does go down. It would not surprise me at all. Paul Reed is a phenomenal player. And you guys can go watch some YouTube highlights when Joel Embiid was out. Paul Reed was just getting double-doubles, blocking shots. He was just feasting out there. Wouldn't surprise me if you did see Paul Reed in the starting lineup. But as we're recording this on July 21st before training camp, probably lean Isaiah Stewart right now.
Yeah.
So this is an Isaiah Stewart question, and I've had conversations with people that obviously hear stuff sometimes with him. And do you think that he does get moved or he does get traded? Because his name has been just circulating around like Knicks talk. His name has been circulated around Pelicans beat reporters because they still need a center, but I don't really know how that works cap space wise, unless, we're, absorbing some salary, but we really don't have that much cap space left. Do you think that they decide to move Isaiah Stewart this offseason?
As of right now, I'm going to say no. I think right now we're looking at Isaiah Stewart being moved possibly at the if he gets moved for that matter.
Yeah.
At the trade deadline or next offseason. I don't see him being moved before the offseason. I don't know what type of trade I think there is something there for the Pelicans. Excuse me. I think the Pelicans might be enticed to give up some assets because they do need a center. But when it comes to the Knicks, I just don't know what the Knicks have to offer that the Pistons would necessarily want. I mean, I got to go look at their roster again, but just off the top of my head, I don't see what type of Knicks deal makes sense for him for the Pistons. But I mean, the Pelicans, they have a couple pieces the Pistons might be able to snag from there. But I think if he gets traded, that's going to be somewhere near the deadline, or somewhere maybe around December, January, where a team is in need of a center. They got to go ahead and make that move.
Yeah, I think for the Knicks, you'd probably think of Mitchell Robinson like right away. Maybe you get your first round pick protections back. I doubt the Knicks want to do that.
Probably not.
I doubt they want to do that, kind of given what they gave up for Mikal Bridges, which, tip their cap to them. Didn't sound like James Dolan was too happy about all this stuff over the past couple of weeks, saying it's unfair. I know some people in the chat are mentioning Deuce McBride. I feel like Deuce McBride, like if they got Deuce McBride for Isaiah Stewart, that would just be a win in itself. But I doubt the Knicks would trade him just because given the type of contract he's on, it's really cheap. And he's probably one of Tom Thibodeau's favorite players because he can play high 30s, high 40s every single night without getting injured. But I really don't think he gets moved. I don't. To your point, maybe it's during the trade deadline, if there are offers there, because every time we talk about Isaiah Stewart in trade rumors, there's tons of contenders that are interested. OKC, New Orleans, Boston. Obviously, the contenders see the type of value he does bring. And I think as a Piston fan, that should kind of tell you something of the type of player he is. I just think, recently the Pistons have been kind of just playing him as a spot up shooter and not really like what his strengths are. And I'm assuming JB Bickerstaff can kind of play to his strengths.
Yeah, that's also the other thing. I mean, I've liked Stewart more. I've seen the best of Stewart when he's been playing in the post as opposed to trying to make this guy as a stretch forward. And again, it's no disrespect to him, but I believe that we've seen the best of him being that bully ball, being that enforcer in the low post, as opposed to just stepping on the 3-point line and taking shots. I mean, granted, yeah, he's shown an ability to hit them, but he's also shown an ability to go very, very cold for significant stretches from beyond the arc. And when you bringing in guys like a Tobias Harris, you're seeing Clintman showing some signs of being able to do something. You still got Fred Vincent, who's going to be working with Ron Holland, a guy that's dedicated to making his shot better, and a guy that I think could really end up being maybe a stretch for it at some point in his career. Do you really need to focus on Stewart being that type of guy? No. I think as a backup center, he has a place in this league, and he's like you said, he has a familiarity with the team. The chemistry is already there. The Pistons front court rotation with those guys, I believe, is already solidified. So at least for right now, I don't see him getting moved before the season starts. If he gets moved before the season starts, I think it's part of a big deal.
Yeah, and a bigger move down the future, because all the deals that they made are 1 to 2 years. Like it's not like a lot of money long term on their books. So obviously they have a bigger plan. Maybe in free agency, they feel like in a year or two they'll be able to try to like get certain type of players, but you never really know. I don't really think he's going to get moved either. But we'll end this podcast with one more question, and this is from Life with Chris. And he had a question for both of us. He said, let's say we make a jump to 35 to 40 wins next year. Do you think the following year is when they make a move for an all-star type player or a playoff jump?
Absolutely. I mean, when you get to the 35, 40 wins, now you're not only do you could you possibly make a move for a player on the trade market, but depending on what their cap situation looks like, you also look a little bit more attractive to free agents. Like, okay, they went from being the worst team in the league over the past couple of years to now being a fringe play-in playoff team. Maybe I could be the guy that could come there and help get them over the hump. So I believe if they're able, I honestly think if they get to 35, 40 wins next season, I think they're further ahead in their rebuild than they probably anticipated. And that changes things.
It honestly does. Now, I know a lot of people have been asking, like, is this a playoff team? I think the goal should be play-in. I think that's where you should set the goal. Now, if you make the play-in, and to Chris's point, you're around that 35 to 40 wins, and you're around that 9 to 10 seed. Jumping from 14 to 35 would be a huge improvement. Not saying it's not possible. Anything's possible. But to Chris's point, yeah, you're probably going to start to look to get better players surrounding Cade Cunningham. You have players that you just signed to 1 to 2 year deals. You're probably going to look to get more pieces around him to try to improve the roster year after year. I just don't know what type of archetype they're looking at. I don't know if they're looking for more of like a secondary scorer next to Cade Cunningham. I don't know if it's an all-star type forward. I know we've mentioned Brandon Ingram multiple times. Me and you have, and I've even talked about him multiple times. Kind of sounds like he wants to go back to New Orleans, but New Orleans isn't biting the bullet on that $200 million contract. They're only willing to give him, last time I read it, it was like 170 or 180. That's like what they're willing to give him. But I get it. You want to get your money while you can, but I really don't know what the type of our type of player that the Pistons would be looking at. I think this season will be really telling to see how Jalen Duren develops. I know a lot of people were kind of down on him defensively last year, but I guess he basically said that it was an effort thing with him and he just wasn't trying. And it wasn't ankles, it wasn't injury. He said it's like, it was on me. I just wasn't trying. I'm really interested to see how him going up against Anthony Davis and all those guys at Team USA, how he comes into this upcoming season and how he develops as a defender, because I was watching all of his college tape, Kory. Like the defensive instincts are there. It might not be pretty, but he does deter a lot of shots. Like he's a presence down there. So it'd be really interesting to see how JB Bickerstaff really gets him right.
Yeah, I'm just, and I want to be as respectful as possible when I say this. So I'm going to be I think last season was a wash.
Yeah.
As far as everybody's development. I don't think you can really hold anything toward anybody last year, because there were just there were just a lot of things that just did not make sense. There are a lot of things that were very head scratching, and it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the guys, they got their development hindered off of a lot of uncertainty throughout the entire season. I mean, just off rip out the gate, you have a guy like Jaden Ivey who established himself as one of the, I'm not saying the best, but one of the better rookies in his rookie class. And then he's benched out the gate the next year to start the season. There was a lot of health issues with that team last year. A lot of guys put in spots they probably should not have been in. A lot of starting lineups that just did not make sense when they were put on the floor. So this is going to be a really interesting year as far as the development of, like you said, Duren, Ivy, Asar Thompson, even Cade. I mean, shoot, Cade, and then you posted my tweet when I said this. Cade, Duren, Ivy, even Isaiah Stewart, for that matter, they're on their third coach in the past 3 years. This is not a good environment for them to develop because there's no continuity.
Yeah. There's no stability.
So I mean, let's just for their sake, let's just hope for their sake they're able to finally have something stable to lean on, a system that they can grow under and develop and be able to get better at. Because again, I keep going back to this Detroit Lions analogy, but I was talking to a couple of players in the mini camp, and they said one of the big benefits is that there's been continuity and stability. They're not having to learn a new playbook. Matter of fact, it was Kelvin Shepard who I was talking to, the linebackers coach. He said one of the big benefits of going into year 4 with this Dan Campbell regime is that these guys already know the playbooks. They know everything. Now we're able to just keep on developing and installing new tweaks to make them better. This group hasn't had that. This Pistons group hasn't had that. It's been a different shift each year for them. So let's hope they are able to get some stability going. So now you're able to start to see these guys develop and see what they really are. Because I mean, who knows what Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey, these guys can become if they keep getting a different voice each year.
So I agree with you. I 100% do. Chris actually wants to know, when you're done with school, will you start doing podcasting, your own podcasting more?
It's in the talk. It's being discussed. Right now, because of my employment status, I am not allowed to host my own podcast. I can do as many guest appearances as I want, but we're trying to work something out as far as me doing We're trying to work something out. I'm just gonna leave it at that. We're trying to work something out.
Yeah, I mean, if people haven't seen, you had a really good sit-down interview a couple of weeks ago with Chris Broussard.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that was a really cool interview that you did with Chris Broussard, kind of talking about like Isaiah and the Pistons and just like the current Pistons and how they're perceived around nationally. If you guys do want to go check that out, it should be on MLive.com. Really good interview, by the way.
The one thing I would say I appreciated about the podcast with Chris was not just the fact that he took his time out to do it, but every analyst, reporter on the national level, it felt like he had more of a pulse of what was going on with the Pistons more than anybody. Maybe that's just because you could say it's because he does a podcast with Rob Parker, or just because he's a damn good NBA journalist. But it was just like he actually, with some of the things that he was saying is like, what are you doing differently on a national level that everybody else is not doing? And when it comes to these Pistons takes, because they were tangible, they made sense, it wasn't nothing fluff. It was like he studied the team.
Yeah, I mean, probably doing a podcast with Rob Parker, who's shout out to him for starting that all black Detroit sports rap radio. I honestly love it, man, because you're getting another voice in the city that isn't just the same old, nonsense you get at other stations or other networks. I honestly really love like what they're doing over there. I know we had Eric on last week who he does fill-ins and he was telling me about it. I know you were, I think, the first ever guest that they had on over there. Like I really love
still crazy.
I love what they're doing over there, man. It's so different.
Yeah, it's good basketball talk. It's not basketball. It's good sports talk in general. Good sports talk in general. No hot takes. In the takes they do make, even the ones I disagree with, they're rooted in logic. It's good, fun sports talk. You don't have anybody being demeaning or ridiculing people for being fans. It's just like it's a definite alternate voice for sports talk that was needed on the radio dial. Most definitely.
Yeah, I honestly like I'll be on Instagram and I always see Lindsey Hunter going live on Instagram, and him and Montez have like a really, really good just show. I always tune in.
Yeah, they have a really good. They have a really good rapport.
Yeah, for sure. I want to give you the floor though to plug everything that you're working on, whether it's Lions, Pistons, or whatever projects that you have coming up in the future.
All right, first off, thanks again, Anthony, for just having me on. Pistons Talk, always an enjoyable conversation when you have me on. Right now, like I'm going to be working on a projected depth chart for the Detroit Pistons. I'm going to call it my very, very premature early depth chart. I'm just going off of who I think could be the starting five and why. I'm going to do a Pistons mailbag tomorrow, so if you have questions, go ahead and start peppering me with the questions. I'm going to drop the mailbag, post in the morning, and then I'll actually drop the mailbag article on Tuesday. And then Lions training camp this week. Probably going to take me away from basketball for a little bit because training camp is so freaking demanding. It's like 7 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. every day for us writers. So definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, make sure you stay tuned. Follow me on Kory, Korye Woods on all social media platforms.
I do have your Twitter down below in the description so people can tap in with you on there. All they have to do is click your link. It'll take you directly to Kory's Twitter. You guys give him a follow. Really good Pistons follow if you guys are into the market for Detroit Pistons news and updates. Also, he does a really good job of covering the Detroit Lions. It seems like every time during the season you get a viral clip. You had so many viral clips last year, like the
last year was nuts.
I told you, man, buy that Twitter check, bro. Those Twitter checks will be hitting different. I'm telling you.
I'll do it. I'll just say this. I was verified before Elon Musk came in and monetized it, but I mean, yeah, a lot of my clips last year, that was just those. I wasn't even trying. It's just like, I'm gonna pat myself on the back in this regard. I know what needs to get recorded and put out there. And I think sometimes that's where my videography background comes into play. Along with the journalism, I know like, oh, this has to go up now.
Yeah.
Shoot, I still, even with the Dan Campbell clip that went crazy, I think that one from his first year with the coffee, I think that did that went nuts.
I remember that when we were both working together, that was just circulated everywhere from like locally to nationally to I even saw it like on Jimmy Kimmel. Like it was
wow.
It was crazy, man. Like you're really good at this capturing the moment. Like I remember the Amon-Ra St. Brown when he lost the bet. We're in the Leprechaun stuff last year. And then I saw it on that Netflix.
Yeah, I saw it on the receiver, and I'm like, what? So yeah, it just I don't really like tooting my own horn on some stuff, but when it comes to that, I'm like, I will pat myself on the back when it comes to those clips because it's like, I just know I'm even though I'm unbiased in my reporting, I'm still a sports fan, and I know the type of stuff that fans want to see. So I'm not too. I don't have excuse me for what I'm about to say, but I don't have a stick up my ass about being a journalist to the point where I don't want to put something out that the fans want to see. I mean, like, I know they want to see him. I know they want to see Amon-Ra St. Brown in this costume. I know they want to hear, even though he's gone now, I know they want to hear what CJ Gardner-Johnson has to say about X, Y, and Z opponent coming up. Just put it out there so they can see it, and I'll write the article later.
Yeah, it's so funny. She said CJ Gardner-Johnson when I was working at the high school company that I used to work at. Maddie Miller, who I'm sure you know, she was doing like broadcasting or like sideline reporting, and like that ass like ate like a chili dog out of CJ Gardner-Johnson's like hand. Like it was funny. I gotta find the video, bro. It's so funny. Like because him and Kirby Joseph showed up to like a high school game. I think it was like Detroit King and
King High School game.
Yeah. So they went out there and definitely checked it out. But like some of the stuff you just see on social media, I think you have a very good ear and a heartbeat of like what the fans actually want to see, and I think that's actually a skill. That's a skill because some reporters are just like, oh, here's my 5,000 word little essay that I wrote about the Lions game tonight. Yeah, here's my column. So where you and a lot of other, beat reporters from like Lions, Red Wings, Pistons, you actually have what fans will actually want to see. Like behind the scenes stuff, I think always looks better.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, peel back the curtain a little bit, give them what they want. I mean, I could write the 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 words, but I mean, like, I can do it. But I think with the way that journalism is changing right now, you have to embrace that. And you have to be able to give them the best of both worlds. You have to be able to give them that video clip along with the actual written words where you're taking you're putting your spin on it. Like you said with the Chris Broussard interview, I still did an article off of that. I gave about maybe 400 or 500 words, but then I embedded the article in there because you want to be able to give the best of both worlds. People still read, but also people like video content as well. And I think with the way journalism is changing, you need to be able to do both. You need to be able to be proficient in both.
Yeah, that's why you see all these radio stations now. Like they do podcasts, they live stream their radio station shows because they know digitally that's where all the people are at right now. Like we have 600 people in here, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. Like
on a Sunday.
Yeah, 600 on a Sunday. Like shout out to you guys in there, but do want to wrap up this podcast. We've almost been on for 2 hours. But appreciate all the people that are in here, and we will see you guys next Sunday. Peace, you guys.
Peace.